AMD promised to bring more mainstream cards in the second quarter, but till now it has only delivered the RX 7600, which is the only budget offering from the company since it launched its flagship RX 7900 GPUs. The problem here is that we still don't know the whereabouts of these cards that fall between the RX 7600 and the 7900 XT. AMD has kept its silence for a long time as of now, and it hasn't teased anything related to rumored GPUs that includes the RX 7700 and the 7800 SKUs. But it is the second time AMD has published a dedicated post about having more VRAM in 2023. The irony is that it recommends getting a GPU with at least 12 GB of VRAM if you are playing at 1440p and 16 GB for 4K resolution, but it hasn't delivered any Ordine 3 GPU that comes with either of the memory sizes. Well, it is pretty obvious that AMD is definitely working on such GPUs, but one of the major reasons why AMD hasn't talked about them in a while is related to performance they offer. Typically, we expect a new GPU to outperform the previous one by at least 30 to 50% higher margin, and this is where AMD is struggling with its mainstream GPUs, namely those that are supposedly going to use the Navi 32 GPU die. In a recent experiment done by Igor's lab, we can get a rough idea of how the RX 7800 XT GPU will perform against the previous generation cards like the RX 6800 XT. Now, even though this experiment has its own flaws, this is the closest simulated test for the 7800 XT. If you remember, AMD recently launched the Radeon Pro W7800 for professional workloads, and it's the only Ordine 3 based card that can come close to the specs of the 7800 XT. Now, even though it is using a Navi 31 GPU die which is also used in the RX 7900 GPUs, it has cut down specs like only 4480 stream processors, 70 compute units, and is based on a 256-bit memory bus and brings 32 GB of GDDR6 memory. These specs are close to the rumored specs of the RX 7800 XT that is supposedly featuring the Navi 32 GPU die, except that it should feature 16 GB of VRAM instead of 32. It will feature around 4000 stream processors, a 256-bit memory bus, 60 compute units, and also TDP that is closer to 260 watts as we see on the Pro W7800. To make sure everything is closer to the 7800 XT, Igor made some adjustments to the card, and upon testing, the simulated RX 7800 XT was just 2 to 4% faster than the 6800 XT, and the calculated 7800 XT was just 4 to 13% faster. In gaming tests at 1080p, the difference was quite negligible in most games, and it seems like the Navi 32 based 7800 XT won't be a good choice for 1080p gaming over the 6800 XT. However, at the same time, I don't think that 8 and 13% higher performance at 1440p and 4K will make any big difference. Now, you also have to keep in mind that the real results are expected to shift in favor of the 7800 XT by a higher margin. This is because the W7800 uses a different die and uses a workstation driver that isn't optimized for gaming. Still, the 7800 XT won't be able to deliver the substantial growth we want because the RX 7600, despite sharing similar specs to the 6650 XT, barely outperforms the latter. Now, before we move on, consider subscribing to the channel if you're new here. By subscribing, you will get all the latest hardware stuff summarized in a few minutes and will also help the channel immensely. Coming back, the problem AMD is facing here is that the RX 7800 XT is supposedly going against the RTX 4070 and will also be priced somewhere near $600. This makes the 6800 XT looks like a badass deal that can be found for as low as $520, and the 6950 XT looks even better for $620. So even if by chance AMD launches the 7800 XT at $500, it is going to end up in a situation worse than the RTX 4070 despite AMD boasting about having more VRAM. The bigger problem I see here is that $500 is already a worst case scenario for AMD, as the production cost for 7800 XT is already higher than the 6800 XT. So even by the profit margin, the RX 7800 XT won't be benefiting AMD unless it brings at least 30% higher performance over the 6800 XT. This means that AMD must use the Navi 31 die instead of Navi 32, but that isn't likely going to happen unless AMD decides to change its mind at the last minute. In case it goes that way, we can expect a cost increase for this card that will make it dumber than before. This is definitely putting AMD into a lot of trouble, as AMD has more mainstream GPUs like the RX 7700 and possibly the XT edition, which should have competed with the RX 6800 XT at a much lower price. These are supposedly going to use the Navi 33 GPU die that is used in the RX 7600, which might make things worse. It looks to me that AMD panicked when Nvidia launched the Ada family and wasn't properly ready to tackle the performance uplift the RTX 40 GPUs are offering, even though we all know that Ada cards have proven themselves to be the worst from Nvidia. Currently, AMD is rumored to launch the RX 7800 and 7700 GPUs before the end of this quarter, which means these GPUs are most likely to hit the retail stores in July or August. Right now, it is too late to postpone these GPUs GPUs, as AMD has already prepared the Navi 32 die, which was shown 2 weeks back in an interview with Forbes. This die fits perfectly with the rumored specifications of the Navi 32 and has one GCD that measures around 200mm square and is surrounded by 4 MCDs, making the total size of the die around 350mm square. Let's wait for these GPUs to hit the market before we make our final conclusion. Until then, you can watch this video to know more about AMD's next-gen CPUs that are about to kill the budget graphics cards. Lastly, if you enjoyed the video, then give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Also, make sure to turn on the notifications to never miss the latest uploads to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.